Well, we are both live, which is a good thing.
Live
He's Joe Rayo,
and in color.
right?
He's Joe Chiappi.
And I,
Yeah,
yeah, and we're both
George.
wearing sweats jackets, hoodies, so to speak.
Yeah, isn't
Although,
that amazing? And we didn't even talk to each other about this, but
no,
here we
yeah, it
are.
was kind of weird. I decided at the last minute because the basement I'm in is kind of cold, so I most nights I'm fine. I got my flannel shirt on and it keeps me comfortable. But for some reason, I'm feeling an extra bit of chill tonight, so I put on the hoodie. By the way, this morning before we start weather, we I have to say this and it's bring this up and it's very very important. This morning at 9 a.m., did you happen to have Me TV on?
No, I did not. Not at 9 a.m.
Okay, well,
Which Perry Mason
it was
episode?
Perry Mason in the case of the deadly verdict.
Okay,
Think about it. The case of the deadly verdict.
Deadly
That it
Verdict.
was the only episode that Perry lost the case at
Really?
the begin. Well, it's. Have you seen it? Have you ever seen it?
I've heard about it.
But you've never seen it.
No, I don't think
It
I have.
actually starts off with the jury coming out and giving their verdict. So you don't see the trial at all. The
Right.
jury comes out, gives their verdict as guilty, and the defendant is remanded for sentencing. And then you can see they come back to a court scene later on where she's sentenced to death, to the death penalty, to death, to the gas chamber. Okay. It actually, Joe, if you're a Perry Mason fan, and I know you are, if you get a chance to, if it comes on again, which it will, you have to see it. It's actually a very well constructed episode, and the characters are kind of interesting, a bit on the funny side. I believe it was Julie Adams who plays the woman who is found guilty of murder, killing her aunt, and for money. And I believe, and I think she just passed away in the last year. She was in her late 80s. But it's a it's a different episode the way Perry Masons are often are constructed with the court, all the court drama at the end and the preliminary hearing. In this, it's the reverse. So you're having to watch Perry try desperately before they, you know, put her in the gas chamber. Because in California they had such a civilized way of of administering the death penalty. So anyhow, it's a very good episode, and I saw it this morning. I even taped it on the DVD because I want to watch it again.
Well, the that had to be what season number six. Perry Mason was on for what, seven
I
or
thought it
nine?
was on for 9 seasons, and I think that was in the fifth or sixth season.
Yeah,
Yep.
they tried all kinds of weird things toward the end of the run. They had him play a dual role, a guy
Yes, I
a
remember that.
Cockney with a Cockney accent,
Yes, I remember that. And after a while, you run out of things to do.
and
All
they
right.
actually had one episode in color.
Yes. All right, and that was the last one. I think the last episode was in color,
No,
right?
the last episode had Dick
Was Dick
Clark was the
Clark?
last one.
Okay.
But in the last season they did a color episode, and I think that didn't quite make it pulled them out of the gloom of ratings to get a 10th season out of CBS. So, but
Yes.
anyway, enough with Perry.
Yes. Well, isn't it true, Mr. Rayo, that the weather models are showing a return to a winter weather pattern? Isn't it true that we are seeing a bit of blockiness developing up in the North Atlantic? Isn't it true that we may wind up with a sizable winter weather event impacting the middle Mississippi, Ohio Valley, the northern mid Atlantic up into New England?
Oh
Isn't
wait,
it true?
Your Honor, he's going ahead he's not even looking ahead to tomorrow or Wednesday, which will, Mr. Mason, Mr.
If
Chiappi,
you please, your
will be a lovely day on Wednesday, and you're already
right.
bringing everybody down with this potential winter storm threat over the weekend.
If it
Your Honor,
please, if it please the court, it is irrelevant, immaterial, and there's a third one. What's the other one? It's irrelevant and immaterial to the subject matter of this case. We are discussing the potential for a winter storm this weekend. Nobody wants to hear about light rain and drizzle that's around tonight and might be around again later tomorrow. Am I
Well,
right or wrong?
uh,
Well, let's ask Hamilton Burger. So, so anyhow, yeah, it's so funny. I was thinking about one thing today is that if we wind up with a snowfall, I'll give it some room. I mean, for me at the coast, where it's likely if it will wind up being less here and more inland if it plays out according to plan. But if we wind up with 4 inches, I would say to get all the or more for the coastal I-95 corridor that we get all the winter cancel people and make them shovel the snow out with a spoon. Okay.
yes,
And I'm not
yes.
talking about a big wooden spoon, but like a really tiny teaspoon, because uh, it's really interesting. You're looking at the models today, and over the last couple of days. I mean, it's clear that this whole week is a stair step down kind of week. We've got two weather fronts coming through, so and each one kind of knocks the pattern down a bit. The second one knocks it down quite a bit, which is for Thursday night, Friday. And that sets up the system for Friday night, Saturday. Well, mostly for Saturday.
I think that this that you spoke about a bit of blocking, though this high that is going to work its way first across the northern tier of the United States over the course of the next several days gets to us by Friday, and then actually begins to move. It's still somewhat progressive, Joe, and may allow for a bit of warmer advection. And it could be two systems on Saturday. The primary system goes to our north and west. A second storm, as it's called in the synoptic book, a Miller B type storm.
Yes.
Not Mitch Miller B.
Nor light beer from Miller. But go on.
Right, right. A system that may begin developing off of the southern New England coastline. It may eventually become the primary, but I think the most of the precipitation we're going to see on Saturday will be from the primary system. And the question is, how much is going to be flung, or how much is going to be transferred from the primary to the secondary, and whether or not there'll be enough warmer advection to perhaps cause maybe a mixing of the precip from snow to ice to sleet, maybe even a touch of rain. In fact, Tim Veltman,
Well, he's up north of I-90. He can just sit back and count the flakes up there.
I'm sorry. First of all, my tongue got in the way and got in to proper pronunciation. But Tim was mentioning when I did a live on YouTube and Facebook a couple hours ago, and he said, well, the 18Z GFS brings the rain all the way up to where he is, up in Albany. And I said, well, it's still 5 days away. I never had much faith in those intermediate progs. A lot can happen between now and the end of the week, and we really won't have any good idea until maybe Wednesday or probably more like Thursday before this whole thing comes more into focus as to exactly what we're going to see.
Look, I would make this argument. To me, it's like a supercharged warm front, regardless of whether the primary or the secondary occur or don't occur. You're going to have, you got this big high that's up in southeastern Canada. You have a primary low that's going to try to make its way toward the lower lakes. Whether it gets there or not remains to be seen. And the high is wedging down the coast. You've got this frontal boundary, which is really a supercharged warm front. If you wind up with some good inflow into all that cold air and that cold high, you're going to have a band of moderate to heavy snow that's going to play through in about 4 to 6 hours time. And maybe in inland areas, it'll be more like 6 to 8 hours worth of time. And even if it was to change, looking at this 18Z GFS, that's at the very end anyway. So you would have already gotten all your precip. The bulk of your precip would have been snow. So, to me, I'm not really overly concerned. I'm actually more concerned about making sure, if there's enough precip north of the warm frontal boundary as it tries to push northward. If there is, you could put down several to many inches, then it ends as some rain or changes over to sleet, ends as some rain or drizzle, and you're done. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Sometimes I've seen, though, and I worked with a guy who sometimes pointed out that in these kind of cases, when you have the primary, transferring its energy and its moisture to a second system, sometimes you're right in between the two systems, and sometimes you can end up with
in a bit of a hole.
with a bit of a hole.
Yeah, this one looks pretty well developed, though. It doesn't look like, um, a lot of sometimes when you get like when they're coming in from the west, if there's no Atlantic, no really strong Atlantic or Gulf inflow, the hole is usually in central PA where the mountains are, and
Right.
you get that center jump. I don't know that that's the case this time around. I think there's pretty good, pretty fairly strong inflow of moisture both from the Atlantic and the Gulf, and that they'll actually be a decent area of precip that develops from the cold air damming down the Appalachians. It might even start out as snow clear down into western North Carolina.
Well, now let's take another thing into account, which again Tim Veltman discussed a couple of hours ago, and that is, will the high, so very cold as it is, be also very dry to such a degree so that the first initial shot of precipitation may actually be lost as perhaps what we call in the business virga. Now, take note of the fact that some forecasting models were suggesting we could get snow late Friday night or early Saturday, but it looked to me at least like now the time when the precipitation begins may not be until sometime late morning or early afternoon.
Depending on where you are. Well,
Yeah.
here's an easy way to tell off the model maps. I know when we look at the FOOS, we can do this. So I'll bring up the GFS right now, the late afternoon GFS run. We're also, by the way, we're at a stage at this point. It's been remarkable to me how consistent these models have been from run to run. They really have. I mean, the timing's been adjusting, but the in terms of how this whole thing is coming out, it's been pretty much holding the same. But if you look at, there's two different versions on Tropical Tidbits. This version of the GFS is the one that actually shows you what the radar is supposed to look like. Okay, and if you look here by Saturday morning, the echoes are actually by Saturday afternoon. The echoes are up into southern New England. If we switch over to the precip map that shows actual measurable precip, there's a gap between it cuts off in somewhere on a diagonal from Sandy Hook to the northwest corner of New Jersey going up to Lake Ontario. I'll switch back to the radar for the same time frame, and you'll see that light blue extends maybe about 75 or 100 miles more to the northeast. So that area there that's up into western Connecticut and Long Island by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that might be just a loft. So so you got to be careful when you look at the models when you see it showing what it thinks is the radar. Well, the radar may look like that, may not necessarily all reach the ground. This is a cold high, okay, and this is
No question about it. It's a polar high. It's not really so much an Arctic, but it truly is a one that's coming on down from upstate Canada, so to speak.
yeah, and I actually think, and I'm going to roll this back. We've got three players here going on the map. We're going to start with this is the map for tonight. Okay, so let me just change. I'm not liking that purple color anymore. Let's go to a nice solid brick red. Okay, so you've got this low, and we can't really see it, but there's another one, somewhere out here. All right, so there's actually three systems that are in play. You've got the old stalled frontal boundary out to the south. Now, what's happening is, and we're going to move this along. What's happening is the first low goes up toward Lake Superior tomorrow, actually pulls up some of that moisture from that frontal boundary to the south, and then it's done. The second low is now coming out. Now, I think this one is very important here because what I believe is going to happen is this thing really strengthens like crazy, or at least that's what the 12Z indicated, strengthens like crazy when it moves out south of Nova Scotia, and it actually becomes a very big gale center when it gets near Newfoundland and over toward Greenland. It gets so big that it's going to keep this big high maybe stuck for a little while when it gets into southeastern Canada. And I think that's going to be the key to how stubborn is this cold air going to be. The energy from our third system is coming into the northwest and heading eastward in the meantime. This map, by the way, is for Wednesday night. And you start to see the moisture come up here. This is for Friday morning. Snow breaking out in the middle Mississippi Valley. But again, look at that system as it moves off the Gulf of Maine. Very windy on Thursday into Thursday night. And then your high builds in. And now, of course, that high just kind of sits there. It starts to move out, but it's going to have a real tough time getting out of the way. And that, I think, is where, you get this cold air that dams down. This is a Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock. You get that cold air that dams down east of the Appalachians. It can get very dicey just inland of the coast. And it might even slow the changeover on the coast.
I would feel a lot more confident in terms of cold air damming if the Northeast or a good part of New England were snow covered. There's not much snow, and that usually helps in the effect of cold air damming. The high wants to stick around for a
Right.
while, but with not that much, I think what the high has to rely on is more of snow cover over eastern Canada.
Which there should be plenty of,
Right,
in spite
right,
of whatever happened on the temperature-wise this weekend up there.
and kind of
Um,
push a finger of cold weather down into New England and even down as far as we are.
I'm going to bring up the, Joe, I'm going to bring up the 850. The 850 frontogenesis. This is Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Look where the zero is. It's down in North Carolina. I mean, this is very cold air. And in fact, even here's the thing: Saturday evening at 7 o'clock, the zero at 850 at 5,000 feet or just under 5,000 feet is still not even to Atlantic City or Philadelphia. The problem is that you are going to probably, at least at the lowest levels of the atmosphere, lose it. The bottom couple of thousand feet will probably warm up above freezing right along the immediate coast. So I really think it becomes a question of, are we going to wind up seeing a solid area of moderate to moderate to heavy snow, or as we say it, moderate to S plus, for 3, 4, 5 hours, or is it going to piddle around a steady light, maybe occasionally go moderate, briefly heavy right before it switches over? But this temperature profile, at least at the 5,000 foot level at 850, is not a warm one. So it's a little bit. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. And of course, behind it, it gets very cold going into next week, because the pattern does look cold in the long range.
Yeah, and I noted also a couple hours ago, again on YouTube and Facebook, I said, has anybody noticed the fact that over the last 2 weeks we've had more than our fair share of windy days here, and already, as you just pointed out, Thursday looks like a day we might see wind advisories go up. Another day like that, perhaps on Sunday. Then that situation on Sunday, pulling in the next surge of cold air, and I don't even want to look beyond Sunday as to what may be happening for next week. But winter seems to have woken up. Old man Winter seems to have woken up and is making a stay here.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
and,
just pulled up I just pulled up the sounding for zero Z for New York. Well, roughly New York. I kind of guessed with my cursor there, and yeah, from the 900 millibar level all the way up. It's way below freezing, and it's also very saturated. But it's the very bottom of the atmosphere. It's got a temperature of 37 at that point at 7 o'clock in the evening, even though it is about -3 at 850, which normally would be cold enough for snow. So it's basically you're losing it at the very, very bottom of the atmosphere.
mhm.
Well, the temperature's a little high, but I wonder if the way the European has it, the European actually has, it's a burst of snow, and I'll pull up pivotal weathers maps, Joe. On the surface, it's got a burst of snow that comes in during the afternoon, changes over to sleet, and then it just shuts off. Then it just ends.
Right.
So there really doesn't even appear to be that much rain. Like if it changes to rain at the end, this is I got the European from today. it matches up. It's really not that much different from the 18Z GFS model. All of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, snow just about getting to New York City at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 7 o'clock, let me get a little closer here. By
Meanwhile,
7,
I want to point out you just brought up the sounding for New York City. I just brought up a sounding. This would be for um, the evening hours, late afternoon, early evening for where I live. And just like what you just pointed out for New York City, even up here, now this is the 18Z GFS, it's suggesting that right down at the bottom level of the atmosphere, 37 degrees and rain,
really, even up by you.
even up by me. Yeah.
Okay, so at that point, again, it
Excuse
comes.
me. This is at six. This is at 6Z.
Oh, it's
Just
6Z because
let me just.
I'll do 0Z for you. Hang on, let me get really tight.
Now it's six. I just went to 0Z, and in my approximate area, it's 32. So supposedly it's going to go from 32 to 37 during the evening hours of Saturday. But this is not before we may have gotten a pretty good thump of snow
Right. By the
from
way,
mid.
I pulled up a temperature point there just by I had the wrong day up. This I had it up for Friday night at 1 a.m. Saturday morning. It's got a temperature by you of about 14, a surface temperature of 14.
Really?
Yeah, and up in Albany, 7. I mean, at least, and I'll go even further north up near Plattsburgh. It's got 0. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. It's got -6. So this is very. Let's make no mistake. This is very cold air that is going to be up there, and it's going to wedge down. At least initially, it's going to wedge down strongly, and then we'll see how quickly it gets eaten away. That's always the big mystery is how fast does it get eaten away? Because we know that sometimes, especially away from the coast and inland areas, it can get locked in. And I think that's going to hinge on, ultimately that's going to hinge on a secondary and how fast does it develop.
Right. That's going to be the key. Is when to. And of course, a couple of days ago, it really looked like it was going to be all primary. In other words, the first system and make that the only system. And it's been in the last couple of days now that the models are beginning to show that a secondary is going to develop sometime later on Saturday or Saturday evening, somewhere along the southern New England coastline. The question is where, when, and how strong and how quickly does all of that happen?
Right.
And we're still 5 days away, so you really can't pin your hopes on any kind of model right now. The earliest that you might be able to pin your hopes on something might be Wednesday night, more likely during Thursday or Thursday evening.
I agree.
There's
There's still some maneuvering that's going to occur, and one of the areas to watch carefully. And again, here's this. Take a look on this upper air. How we transition over. It's really remarkable that we're going, from this. The deep trough in the west and the ridge in the east. This was the upper air I have up right now across the North America view for Monday morning and this morning, and you spend the week just sort of radically changing everything as the trough in the west starts to shoot that energy east. You see it here by Friday night into Saturday. You've got a shortwave trough moving in to the middle and upper Mississippi Valley. The upper high off the southeast coast is gone. It's getting flattened down from the Bahamas to Cuba, and of course that trough sharpens up. But take a look from Wednesday night into Thursday. You can see this wrapped up upper low that forms between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. This is one of the reasons we've been talking about the fact that there's been no traffic in the Atlantic to slow these systems down a little bit as they move toward us. Well, we finally got something out there, and the teleconnections today from last night. Take a look at this on the NAO, Joe. From today's the 13th, so from Thursday right through the weekend and into early next week, that NAO goes somewhat negative, and that is a reflection of kind of a blockiness and I think that this system for Thursday is going to be key to whether, how much that high holds on in the eastern part of the United States, and the PNA. My God, talk about going from super negative, off the wall, completely off the charts negative today, to by the time we get to Friday, it is just about hitting the neutral line. That is a big that is a very radical uh, move that is happening on the on the the jet stream. I'm losing my train of thought here. The pressure field across North America is just being flipped upside down this week, and we're seeing the outcome that it's going to be reflected in a storm developing for Saturday.
If you want to use an analogy, a football analogy, that PNA looks very much like yesterday's playoff game when
The Kansas City
when
against Tennessee.
Kansas
Yeah,
City, yeah,
well, you know what? That's actually a pretty good analogy. It's like you're down like more than 24 to nothing here. You're down like 48 to nothing, and
yeah.
you come all the way back to tie it. I mean, that's really, that's a complete upheaval.
Kansas City against Houston, by the way.
Kansas
Not,
City against yes, I'm sorry, Kansas City against you. What did I say? Tennessee?
you said Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm losing my mind. Don't mind me. But there you go. So yeah, big radical change in the atmosphere going on. And by the way, once this is done, you're now going into next week where we've got a ridge where there was a trough. You've got a trough in the east where there was a ridge. You have a trough out from from the Gulf of Alaska southward. I mean, really, this is a whole different look here. And you also have an upper high that's building up from the Azores to southern Greenland and over toward Labrador. So the flow from Canada is very well established here in the long haul.
And the Climate Prediction Center now actually has a broad area on their 6 to 10 day probability map, a broad area covering much of the Northeast of 60% probability of below normal temperatures. And that's a pretty good turnaround considering that just a few days ago, for the time frame over the weekend, they had 80% probability of above normal.
Right.
So really everything is the mild air just completely collapses. The cold air makes a big comeback. The thing, however, for all of you snow lovers out there to also note is that the CPA, that the Climate Prediction Center is also indicating as the colder it gets, also
The drier it gets.
precipitation, the drier air taking hold in the Northeast. So it's cold, but it also looks like it may be turning dry as well.
Well, but that may not be a bad thing for snow lovers. That may actually be a good thing. Because if you look at a lot of the snowier winters, a lot of them have also come with subnormal precipitation because you're deep into the cold air. So at the end of the day, it just kind of matters when the cold air is around. Is there going to be some kind of weather system to interact with it? And at least from the standpoint of looking at this in the long term, as far as the upper air is concerned, the operational runs of the models and the ensembles are all very cold as we head toward the last days of January and into February. In fact, if you look here, you've got a blocking upper high coming in from one end over Alaska and another high that builds up to the north over Greenland. And it's the jet stream is just suppressed so far south. I would tend to think that not only will it be cold, but if we wind up being this cold and you don't get any snow, that in itself would be remarkable. Would you have all that cold air around, assuming it verifies?
Just for the heck of it, I'm running the current GFS forward, and once we get through this atmospheric hemorrhage on this upcoming weekend, then for the most part it's dry and cold until look at this until the beginning of the following weekend. This would be the weekend of the 25th, 26th, where they have a rather intense looking storm. And again, this is
Yeah, it's
God, no,
way out, but the models are kind of looking. They are all sort of looking at that time frame for something else to possibly happen.
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see when we get there. But the upper air to me is pretty impressive. By the way, I have where is it? Since we do like what the WPC people do, I have the 4 to 7 day snow outlook, probability of at least a quarter of an inch of liquid from WPC. It actually has a 30 to 50% probability of at least a quarter of an inch of liquid precip that's going to be in the form of snow or sleet, but in this case, it'll be snow. Uh, we're seeing that over much of Long Island, back to New York City, down through New Jersey, everywhere west of the Garden State Parkway, and then literally just barely north of New York City, northward in a narrow strip is a 50 to 70% probability of at least a quarter of an inch of liquid precipitous snow. And then you start to get, by you, it's between 70 and 90% probability of at least of a quarter of an inch of liquid with regard being snow. So I guess the next question is to figure out, how much precip is going to fall and how much of it is going to be snow before it changes over. I think those are going to be the critical questions, Joe. And on the WPC's view, the 7 day forecast, which I have here somewhere, here we go. On their 7 day forecast, they have much of eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England in an inch and a quarter to an inch and a half of liquid. So that's pretty sizable.
And take a look here on the on that map that you were just talking about. This is the winter weather outlook, day 5, probability of exceeding a quarter of an inch on Saturday at 12Z anyway. The closest precipitation area is way to the south and west, probably not in southeastern Pennsylvania. All of New Jersey, all of southeast New York, and Long Island is out in the clear, at least as of 7 a.m. on Saturday, according to this probability map. Then, as you pointed out, by 24 hours later, 7 a.m., we have all of that moisture and all of that precipitation. And then just as quickly, by 12Z Monday, it's all gone. It all has moved rapidly off to the northeast into northeastern Connecticut and central Massachusetts. But the immediate tri-state region is, again, back out in the clear.
Let's go through what's going on tonight really fast. We've got a lot of action out in the western part of the United States, where we've got winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. California, northern California, northern Nevada, the Sierra Nevadas in California. Some winter storm watches peppered in there as well, and heading up through Idaho, Oregon, and into parts of Washington. We've got the dense fog advisories in parts of the central Gulf Coast. Of course, we know much of the Gulf Coast states getting hit very hard with severe weather and tornadoes this past weekend. And we late last weekend, this past weekend. And we've got a few scattered areas of winter weather advisories up in the northern plains, the western Great Lakes, southern half of New Hampshire, and southern Maine. And we've got flood watches up for northern Georgia, the northern half of Georgia. There was a little bit of rough weather today in the southeast. Had some thunderstorms in parts of North and South Carolina. Now we're also seeing some heavy rain and a few scattered thunderstorms in the mix, moving out of Mississippi and Alabama and heading into Georgia, and some scattered areas down in through Louisiana. And just a quick look at the satellite loop. I love this loop, Joe. Found this new option on the Go satellite page. It's called the Sandwich RGB, and it basically, it kind of combines the visible with the infrared, and it shows the higher cloud tops really very well. And we've got this. There's a bit of a subtropical flow because of the old front from yesterday stalled out to our southeast, driving clouds northeastward. I thought we'd have a little bit of sun today. It was just not a nice day here.
Actually, the clouds overhead now may thin out enough so that late tonight you might be able to see that waning gibbous moon, although any view of the moon tonight or even of the sun early tomorrow will be as if you were looking through a jar of mayonnaise. I mean, it's not going to be a full, brilliantly clear sky, and then the clouds will thicken up during the tomorrow. We'll get that threat of a few showers here late tomorrow and into tomorrow evening. But again, backing up to the opening moments of our discussion tonight, Perry. Wednesday looks like a real pick of the weekday. I mean, bright and sunny, temperatures even in the lower Hudson Valley in the lower 50s, a good 15 degrees above normal for this time of the year.
Yeah.
And that'll be probably the last time that you'll see a day quite that nice for a good number of days to come, because after that, the bottom falls out of the thermometer and stays down probably through Thursday, Friday, the weekend, and on through much, if not all, of next week.
So usually when we deal with these things, because I'm guessing I really didn't pay too much attention today because I had my hands full doing stuff. But I'm guessing that social media is a buzz for all of this, and of course, you and I will do what we usually do in situations like this, which is to, describe it and explain the meteorology behind it, give it a collective yawn, and wait and move on to the next day. So, for those of you who are new, we want to welcome you. Use your Gmail account to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, use your Gmail account to subscribe to Joe Rayo's channel, Joe Rayo Weather. It's very important that you have both of us in case one of us should, for whatever reason, not be able to fulfill our duties for the regular live streams. Then you got the other guy as a backup. But please, by all means, if you subscribe with your Gmail account, and then you can participate in the chat. And we see all the regulars are on here: Beryl Rakin, Ryan Ford, Steve Lapointe. Mark G is on. Zim is on tonight. Nice to see you. Bobby Livingsworth, Peter Bicker, and Timothy Veltman. Just running through Chuck Cardillo. Can't forget Chuck. I know Robert Young was probably on a bit earlier today. Scott Briller, one of our not only our regular, but we call him the chairman because he's usually the first one on the chat board and always has some very interesting stats to throw our way. So just want to give everybody a collective welcome and thank you for being here on this Monday night.
Peter Bicker on the chat board says, I just saw a Met posted on Twitter that the Euro weeklies that just came out this evening are showing cold and wet conditions as we go into the month of February, which would equate to a snowy pattern.
Well, that takes us, but that's kind of what the GFS and is getting at for its 16-day period, which takes us to January 29th. So yeah, I mean, look, the pattern is going to do what it usually does in most years. It's going to behave like winter time, okay? Which means it gets cold sometimes, and sometimes it snows. Yeah, right, Joe?
It does.
It does. On occasion, it does do
Although
that. Yes. It's
although
remarkable.
I will point out this is the 43rd consecutive day where I have not had to use
The snowblower,
which is wonderful.
Well, that's not a I mean, that's a good thing. Did you have to do the thing? I put stabilizer in mine. At least I think I did. I'm getting to the point right now, Joe. When I leave the house, I once I'm about a mile away, that is the point where I start thinking, did I turn the gas off the stove? It's like Bugs Bunny and Rocky. Would I turn on the gas if you were in this stove? You might, Rabbit. You might.
You might.
Yes. But yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah.
Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I started the blower up at the end of December. It's now gotten to the point where if we continue in this pattern, I'm going to have to start it up every like 15 or 20 days just to make sure that everything is running properly. Because you never know. You don't want something disastrous to happen right in the middle of some mayhem from the skies. But
yeah.
Stabilize the gas.
Beryl Reagan wants to know: is it possible on Saturday that the storm stays all snow and doesn't change over to rain? Now Beryl's close to the coast, close as opposed to being as opposed to being inland. Because I think the answer to that question really depends on where you are. But go ahead, Joe. What do you think?
I'm not going to say anything until we get to later in the week. I could see anything from snow to a quick burst of snow to maybe some sleet at the end. I could see all snow, which would make, I guess, Beryl happy if that be the case. And I'm even wondering whether or not perhaps even there's slight chance that we might just get a little bit of precipitation because we were in between systems, in between a rather strong system going up to our north and west, and another system that
Waiting
just
for the
were,
secondary. Well, that
were,
sure. I mean, that's as you said. That's why you wait till we're going to certainly wait on this. Uh, the David Schwartz hitting super chat tonight. Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it greatly. Chris Alley is enjoying the show tonight. Nice to see you on board, Chris. Johnny Quest asks you, Joe. There've been a lot of volcanic eruptions lately,
yeah,
and
Philippines most recently.
yes, any chance that that will have an effect on the weather down the road?
I'm not really a volcanologist, and I'm not sure this latest volcano, which they're making a big deal about in the Philippines, just how large scale that is, as opposed to some of the really truly tremendous blow ups that we've seen over the last half century, like Pinatubo, for example, which did have a most definite effect on the climate of the northern hemisphere for about a year or two, or maybe the Ballet, the volcano back in the 60s, I think in Bali that blew up, El Chicon, which blew up in Mexico back in the early 80s. So I'm not sure whether or not this eruption in the Philippines or previous eruptions are going to, well, maybe if we have a whole bunch of them, that might be similar to having one big blow, putting a lot of ash, dust, and a huge aerosol cloud in the atmosphere, which could have a say in affecting our climate. As I mentioned some weeks ago, those people who point towards sunspots in the 1645 to 1715 interval, there were no sunspots, the so-called Maunder minimum, and that coincided with the Little Ice Age in the northern hemisphere. And so a lot of people pointing and saying that's the key that the sunspots were not around. But then you have somebody like a Gavin Schmidt of NASA who says no, it has nothing to do with the sun. It had something to do with volcanic eruption. There were a lot of volcanic eruptions during that time frame, and that's what lowered the temperatures. So who's to say and who's to know whether or
Well,
not this volcanic eruption in the Philippines will have anything to say with our climate in the weeks and months to
I
come?
got to go back and look at that period that way just before we went into the March of 18 with the four nor'easters of the apocalypse,
Yes,
right? As
yeah,
in the back of my mind, I remember distinctly, that was a stretch of time where we had an off the wall negative PNA and off the wall negative. Eventually, we wound up with an off the wall negative NAO, which really is what helped, what created the whole environment for the four nor'easters, and a negative EPO. I seem to recall in that period where we had this super off the wall negative Pacific North America index. It was also a period where we had like volcanoes erupting in places and earthquakes happening in strange places. And that seems to be happening again here. We've got these volcanoes going. We've got you had earthquakes in Puerto Rico. I wonder if there's some kind of loose connection of some sort between all of that. Is the fact that the atmosphere, the actual atmosphere, when you're talking about a PNA that's at minus 600, that's really off the wall in terms of extremes, both on the Atlantic side and the Pacific side. I mean, is that all? Is there some sort of loose, kind of out of balance connection? I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head here.
well, I don't think, even if we were to have the most powerful the most powerful volcano that we've ever seen erupt, I honestly don't think we would see much of anything happen in terms of climate and in weather for a good number of months. I mean, it's going to take time for that aerosol cloud to go up into the atmosphere and then spread itself out across much of the northern part of our planet. So it would not be something instantaneous. What's happening now in the Philippines, and if we have a few more of these volcanic eruptions, maybe this might have something to some say in our weather, maybe the middle or latter part of this year. But I'm not into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Somebody
Well,
like a
neither am I.
Captain Smith might know better than I, but
Ro-
certainly
Ro-
interesting.
Ryan Ford, do you think the secondary low develops closer to our area as opposed to northern New England, or is that a long shot? Actually, Ryan, if you look at the map, the GFS very closely, there's a secondary low that I saw on here. In fact, I'll bring the map up to show you. So hang on one second while I get my pen organized here. Um, and
I will
I'll
on the European ensembles, there was a hint of a secondary for 12Z Saturday. And then all of a sudden, come 12Z Sunday, the center of a rather significant low pressure system was literally right on top of the New York City metropolitan area. So whether or not that is the consolidation of a weak system on Saturday and the main system to our north and west consolidating to one big system over us on Sunday, and again, 5 days out. So
Who knows?
we'll
Now
see.
here I've got this is the GFS at 7 o'clock in the evening on Saturday, Ryan. And if you look very carefully here, you'll see here's your primary low. Okay, but right in here, right there, there's a closed isobar right off the right just east of Salisbury, off the Delmarva Peninsula. Okay, so that really that's going to become the storm that winds up going up into the Gulf of Maine. So the question is, if that secondary is forming and it's got a closed isobar in there, does do these isobars start to wrap around a bit, and as the low starts to deepen and move to the northeast, and you get a little bit of pinching that happens where the warm air just kind of gets pinched off. The other thing to consider too is the fact that that could be all well and true, but you could also have all the precip come up with the warm advection moving northward. That plays itself out. The secondary develops, but you're already almost at the end of whatever precip you would have anyway, and it changes over to rain and ends as a little bit of rain and drizzle, and that's the end of that. So you get a good solid shot of precip that comes up in the cold air, but after that's spent, you may not get that much behind it.
And it may very well be, as we said at the onset of our talk tonight, that the primary may be the player. The primary, the moisture associated with the primary may be the thing that gives us whatever we get out of this, as opposed to the secondary, which may eventually take all of that moisture and energy and say, "Come on, guys, we're leaving," and that's it. Everything shuts off or shuts down by the time we get to sometime during the first part of Saturday night.
I had Bill. Oh, here he is. Bill Hooper said if the blocking high gets stronger, lower pressure should form off the Delaware coast. Well, you see off the GFS what we've got. There actually is a low that develops there later Saturday afternoon. If it turns to rain at the end, and then it just makes it more difficult to remove. You'll get 4 inches of 3 or 4 inches of snow along the coast, weighted down by some heavy rains. What do you think, Joe? I mean, worst case scenario for inland areas. Let's forget about the changeover thing, because I think once you go north of Route 84, you have to believe that for the majority of this precip is going to be in the form of snow.
You have to believe that, but there's still, is hanging above our heads here the possibility that even up north of 84, after an initial thump of snow, that it may change over or mix with some ice and sleet, which could hold down accumulations.
Right.
If it were to stay mostly snow, who's to say 4 to 8, 5 to 10?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is before we start, seeing posts from people making the top side sound like it's going to be somewhere between the second and third story of a building, let's please put this into perspective here. I mean, this will probably be your standard several inches along the coast before it changes over to sleet and rain. 4, 5, 6, 7 inches in inland spots. You start to go north to upstate New York and, maybe up around I-90 and up into New England. There you might be talking about, 8 plus, whatever it is. But, we aren't talking here about some mega storm, and it'll probably fall short to a certain extent. It may fall. I don't want to go overboard here, because I want, like you said, let's wait a few days to see how it plays. But I just want to also keep a sense of perspective here. It's winter time. It's supposed to snow in the winter time. These are not shocking developments, and I know snow lovers get really excited, but just kind of want to put a little bit of a temper here, just kind of hold things down.
Yeah, and it's been over a month. It's been over a month since we've had any kind of, really significant winter weather around here, save perhaps that snow squall that we had on the 17th or 18th of December.
Right. And that less than cheap thrill that we had last week too.
Right.
Fyodor Ledkovsky, Joe, and I'll assume the question is to either or both of us. The 540 line on the 18Z doesn't move further north than central New Jersey, though the entire event on through the entire event on Saturday. What do I think? The 540 line is, yes. The 540 line thickness is usually considered to be the rain snow line, but you have to also look. And as we showed earlier, when we looked at the 5,000 foot level, it's very cold here through this whole event. It's the bottom. It's maybe the bottom 2,500 feet that warm up, 2,000 or 2,500 feet that warm up above freezing, that will cause the changeover to sleet and then to rain. This is one of those situations. Usually it's the other way around. The cold air is kind of wedged in at the surface, and all the warm air comes in aloft, and you lose it from that in that way. In this instance, it may be the other way around. You got all this cold air aloft, and at the surface, at some point, you're going to start to lose it at the very bottom of the atmosphere.
Yeah, we've had a lot of
Maybe.
cases. We've had a lot of cases over the last year or two where the 540 has been way to our north. I mean, let's say up toward the Adirondacks, and you look at that, and at face value, you say, well, it looks like it's going to be mostly rain. No, it hasn't been rain because we've had cases where the 540 has been well to our north, but down by the surface, down here where you and I happen to be, Joe, it's been cold, cold enough to allow for not just snow, but sleet and ice, and that has been a problem. And sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes you have the 540 to the south, indicating that it's certainly cold upstairs, but down here at the surface, much milder, much warmer air, so that you end up with either big, wet, slushy flakes that melt,
Right.
or sometimes you just end up with a little bit of sleet or just plain rain.
Bobby Livingsworth says, can the secondary, because he refers to the ocean low, so the secondary low, can it capture the inland low? Well, eventually the secondary does become the new primary. It just probably doesn't do it fast enough.
Right, the lateraling of energy, so to speak, from the primary to the secondary, and usually what happens is that during that process, which maybe only a few hours to maybe a half a day or more, what happens is that literally the primary shrivels up like a balloon losing air, and meanwhile the secondary just starts to rev up and strengthen, and eventually that it's not so much it never is a case of both systems coalescing with each other. It's really just a situation where one says, here's all the energy I have, here's all of my moisture, you take it, hands it off out to the system out at sea, and then the primary says goodbye, poof,
Um,
like Daffy
right,
Duck in the devil outfit.
exactly. Uh, by the way, be careful how you read the maps, because, uh, especially on the GFS, because you can't see the hours in between. So it might have rain in a particular spot at 0Z, but it may be mostly snow up until 5 minutes before 0Z. So just
Right.
bear that in mind. Just because it shows rain doesn't necessarily mean that it hasn't snowed the prior 5 hours. It's got it more than likely has. Otherwise, and the other thing is, I would also be, very when you look at the snowfall maps on Tropical Tidbits, this has been a problem for a while. But we've had there's missing data along the immediate coast in a few places. So just bear that in mind. You're not, there are some issues.
Robert Brown asks, what about the ground temperatures? Well, Robert, I'll tell you what, if we were going to have a chance for some snow or frozen precipitation, let's say tomorrow or even Wednesday, I'd question how much we could get because the ground has certainly been very warm over these past few days. But remember again, Friday, actually from Thursday late through Thursday night, Friday, and on into Saturday, it's going to turn very, very cold. That ground is going to get very cold. So whatever we get during the day on Saturday, even the first light flakes are going to stick almost immediately. So I don't think there's any worry about ground temperatures cutting into or cutting down into your potential accumulation of whatever we do see.
Just trying to
And of course,
see.
there's also the sun angle, right, Joe?
Yeah, so the sun angle. Well, Robert is further south, so I think he's asking. a legit question from that respect, from where he is. Also, remember, it's going to get very cold here Thursday night, Friday night into Saturday morning. I don't know. Did you just? I'm reading the chat while
I,
you were speaking. Did you
no,
just
I
say
just said,
that?
I
Okay,
just,
I'm sorry. It's not that I don't pay attention to every waking word that you say. I usually do, but I'm switching the show, monitoring the chat board.
great minds think alike.
Yes. So I didn't want to step on what you were saying, even though I just did. Um, let's see. Uh, why don't I just don't buy the high suppressing the system to the south theory. I see a high moving east with the system as it moves east. Says Tyler Thompson. Well, you got a point there, Tyler. I mean, at the look, we have this rather fast west to east flow, and you certainly can see that evident. I'll bring the GFS up again. Um, you certainly see it evident in the systems that we're dealing with this week with these lows that are moving across. Because there's nothing in the Atlantic. The Atlantic jet. When you look out in the Atlantic, there are no storms out there to slow things down. So if you look at this, I'll bring up the full U.S. again. We'll bring up the surface here, okay? And this is as of sadly roll it back, but you can just watch these lows. They just kind of fly across the U.S. and out to the east off the New England coast. Now, finally, as we get toward the end of the week, because of what's going on in the North Atlantic, and I'll bring up the North Atlantic view, you're finally getting some traffic out here. This Joe, there's a 963, a 9, yeah, 63 low just southeast of Cape Race, Newfoundland, that goes to very close to the 50 and 50. By the way, by the time we get to Thursday evening, I mean you've got this wrapped up gale center that is going to be between Newfoundland and southern Greenland Friday night into Saturday morning, a 54 low, and that I think is going to that's slowing everything down. Suddenly, the high in eastern Canada is not flying out to the east. It is um, being held there in place because of the big gale center of the northeast, and that is forcing the system to its west to propagate more eastward than say going northeastward and heading up towards James Bay. So
Right.
this is where I think where we're going to have to look for to see if we're going to wind up with something that would be a little more suppressed would be as if this storm between Newfoundland and Greenland just kind of gets hung up for a bit and holds that high in place, and that's where you could wind up seeing cold air wedging down the east coast and uh, holding firmer than what's being modeled at this stage of the game.
That's why you have to really wait until you're within 72 to 84 hours of the event that you're watching, because anything beyond that, I mean, who's to say the storm gets a bit stronger than what the computer models are saying now, as you just pointed out, that could have an eventual say. It's like the domino effect.
Yeah,
And you just can't say, 120 or 150 or 180 hours out, this is what's going to happen, because you just don't know what the system prior to the one that you're watching is going to do, and its effects on eventually what that system coming in from the west is going to experience. Blah 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 blah.
hang on one second. I'm just going to type a response to someone that is asking us about FiOS One News. I just want to say from that respect, because we've been done since November 15th, so that was just about 2 months ago. That was a decision that Verizon made, and if you Google it, it'll say on there what the reasoning is. So just I don't really want to get into it anymore. We discussed that enough back months ago. But if you Google it, it's that was their decision. Daniel Fitzsimmons, does Antarctica ever get low pressure systems, or they just bone dry year round? Well, there's all sorts of storms that are down in the South Atlantic, far South Atlantic and the far South Pacific. I got to tell you the truth, and I'm guessing Joe's pretty much on the same page with this. We don't really look very much. We're kind of focused on what we are here up in North America and specifically in the United States, and maybe occasionally we'll adventure to Europe on one side or to Japan on the other to look at typhoons and everything else. But I really don't know too much about the climate and how it. I mean, in vague generalities, we know how it works, but in terms of specifics, you need to go on Google and just kind of find some sources and read about it.
You could probably go on YouTube. I've seen this particular video more than once. One of the research stations down in Antarctica, and they have various phases, like particular type of weather patterns, like phase 1, 2, 3. And let's just say for the matter of being simplistic here, phase 1 is like one of the absolute worst scenarios you can get in terms of storminess. They have this video of this gal. She's walking down a corridor in one of the research stations. The camera obviously is following her and says, we're experiencing phase 1 right now. Let's show you what phase 1 is like. And she opens with all of her might the door. And all of a sudden you see like tremendous wind, snow, it almost like, wow! And now it's like all of her energy to push the
Right.
back closed again or whatever. And you get an idea. So it's not always tranquil and dry and just cold down there. They do get from time to time their share of miserable weather. And the one thing is that you learn from watching that video is you better not step outside during those phases of miserable weather, because if you are, you are definitely a goner.
I'm not sure what Mount Holly is getting at, Theodore. Is timing based at 12Z's guidance supports more snow due to the system moving through overnight? I'm not sure. I gotta read. I'll have to go back and I'll have to go and read the whole paragraph to see what the context is, because the bulk of the snow is going to be Saturday. If the 12Z guidance is right, it's going to be late Saturday morning into Saturday evening. By the time we get to Saturday night, it's just about all done. So I want to read the context there. So I'm not sure what they're getting at. Hey, do you got Jeopardy tonight?
No, Jeopardy is not on tonight.
Oh, all
Believe
right.
it or not, this is the greatest of all time Jeopardy thing. They're being very interesting. ABC is. Last week it started on a Tuesday, continued until Thursday. There was no Jeopardy on Friday. I'm talking about this championship round. No Jeopardy tonight. They resume play tomorrow night. So it's past 8 o'clock. I don't know what they're showing right now at 8 o'clock, but it's not Jeopardy.
Johnny says at Quest, because he's up in northeastern Virginia, sees rain for your area this weekend. Oh, you might start as snow though, Johnny. If with the wedging down the Appalachians, let's see what the models do the next couple of days. But I think there's a fair chance that you may at least start as snow down your way and maybe get some accumulation out of it before you see any sort of change. Let's see what the next couple of rounds of models show us. I think that pretty much wraps it up. What do you
Oh, here
think?
it is.
Go
Here
ahead.
it is, Joe. Antarctica condition 1 weather. I'm going to post this on the chat board. Hang on for a second. Condition 1 weather. All right. I'm going to put this on the chat board, and if any of you want to see what it can be like down in Antarctica, this particular video pretty much tells the story. Let me see if I can just get it up on. There we go. All right, I just posted it on the chat board. Just go to that link and on YouTube, and you'll see what it can be like down in Antarctica.
Yes. Obviously, for those of you, I know two of you have asked me tonight. I have not gotten my headsets yet. I've been meaning to go on Amazon and order them. Maybe I'll do that after the show is done. Frankus Ablard had his message deleted by Timothy Veltman, but it was a fabulous description of what happens to a certain area of your anatomy when it gets cold. And let's just leave it at that. I guess some people need to be creative.
In honor of Carol Spinney, who did the voice for 50 years of Big Bird.
Mm-hmm.
there was a special that they did, a Christmas special where Big Bird gets lost on Christmas Eve, and everybody's looking around
Uh-oh.
trying to. And there's one comment, one of the characters, I forget who it was, asks Big Bird, how do you feel? Are you all right? Are you cold? And and Big Bird says, oh, I'm okay. I'm all right. Then he pauses. I think though I froze my giblets.
Ha!
Definitely a line for the
For
parents
the
who are
grown,
watching
yes, I'm
the kid.
sure. Javon Perry, I'm sorry. Did I miss your question? Where are you? What if the warm weenie? Oh, well, I guess there was a discussion here of the snow weenies and the warm weenies that are
Oh,
on the board.
please.
By the way, just as an aside, for Joe and I, we're kind of doing 20 things at once between monitoring the chat and I got to switch maps on a switcher. Which when I do that, I can't see what's on the chat board, and then I'm jumping back and forth. So I try to get to everybody's as many people as I can, but I can't. I always wind up messing up. Okay, so if I miss your comment or question, you can always send it to me off the show by putting it in, or Joe by putting it in the comment section. Or if you're a Patreon member, you can certainly send me the question that way. Just because I don't like to miss, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's just the reality of it that I can't see every question that is thrown up there. Okay, Joe,
David,
Joe.
David,
The
David,
link.
no championship Jeopardy tonight because of the college football championship. So obviously the football takes priority tonight over the greatest of all time in Jeopardy.
Joe, your link does. You can't post the link. I have to post it. So send me the link on Messenger. Okay, message it to me, and then I'll
Oh,
put the link on for you.
okay.
Okay, so you send
Uh,
me the link on there, and then you think about Anthony Antonucci's question. It says, "Do you guys have NOAA Weather Radio? I have one in my front loader at work, and he loves listening to it."
NOAA Weather Radio has been off the air in the New York metropolitan area, the biggest city in America. There has been no NOAA Weather Radio because they've had this problem. From what I understand, KW035 is interfering, or the Coast Guard radio station is interfering with KW035, and they haven't been able to figure out yet how they can get the two signals not to interfere with each other. So, unless it's some kind of a major weather event, KW035 more often than not is off the air right now, as though the weather radio station that serves the immediate tri-state area. I think WXM 80, which is out on eastern Long Island and is on a different frequency, has been going. But it's incredible for me to think that if you live in New York City, that you don't have NOAA Weather Radio more often than not.
It is. You just made me have a flashback. Send me that link on Messenger. You just made me had a flashback of. I'm not going to say the name of the person because I'm sure he's long past. He has to be long gone from this earth. But we used to record those NOAA Weather Radio's broadcasts, and he did everything on one take. So if he had a cold and was coughing up a lung in the middle of recording, that's how it played for hours. This is
Right.
Noah Weather Radio, KWO. I remember a few of those, and I just thought, you could kind of just re-record it, but no. But then again, it's a standard of broadcasting, I suppose. I don't know.
I just sent.
I'm gonna put those of you Joe Rayo's link with. Oh, you know what, Joe? There's a problem with this link because it's too long.
Oh, do you want me to make it into a tiny
Yeah,
URL?
make it into a tiny thing.
Hold on.
It's so long, I'm having trouble even just removing it from the chat. The thing here. Hang
No,
on.
no. Those of you not
Okay.
aware, there's a website called Tiny URL, which cuts the length of a URL down very significantly. And this one here, according to what I just created a tiny URL. This URL that I just sent to you, Joe, had a length of 100 characters,
Right.
and I've now chopped it down to like 27. It's
Okay.
amazing. So hang on,
Where is it?
I'm sending it to you. Hold
Oh,
on,
okay.
hold on, not so fast.
You know what happened, Joe? Actually, the link itself was fine, but because it came through Messenger, it has a Facebook extension added to it. So the original link, so it became 380 characters, even though it looks like it was less than 100, and you can go up to 200. So uh,
Let me try
let's
this.
see if it does the same thing again, and it winds up adding something to it.
All right, I just sent it again now.
Yeah, see, it changes it to a Facebook thing. But you know what? I'll solve the problem. Uh, so is it this whole YouTube page with all these Antarctica things on it, right?
Stormy weather in Antarctica research
Oh,
station.
okay. All right. You know what? I'm going to re-search it. I mean,
All right, I just sent it again now.
No, don't send it again. YouTube. I'm creating the link on my side, so it doesn't add all that extra stuff to it. Come on, load already.
I just put the it's not obviously going to link because it's just the URL, Joe. But if anybody's seeing the chat board right now and seeing my message, I'm sure what they could do is just simply copy it.
All right, here it goes. Now the link's up there. I got it up
Okay.
there.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Yeah. I just when you send it, when you send it through Messenger, Facebook does all sorts of weird things to it, and this way, I just pulled it up cleanly off of YouTube. All right, look, it's an hour and 12 minutes in. We haven't. This is the longest show we've done in a while, so let's save our strength for later in the week to deal with whatever it is we're going to deal with. Um, so don't forget, if you have, this is probably a good time if you haven't done it already. Download the free weather apps, the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app and Angry Ben's weather app, the Angry Weatherman. They're both free. And by the way, if you'd like to, and it's certainly not required, but I haven't mentioned this in a while. But
I have an announcement.
Go
I have an
ahead.
announcement, Joe.
Go.
My YouTube page, Joe Ray of Weather, has gone over the 5,000 point.
Oh, glory, hallelujah.
501 subscribers and counting.
Awesome. So we got 499 to go.
Yes.
All right, excellent. So if you haven't done it already, make sure you go to Joe Rayo Weather and subscribe to his channel using a Gmail account, and you'll be all set to go on his live streams. And also, as far as an easy way to support what I'm doing on my YouTube channel is if you shop on Amazon, you can use my Amazon link that I have put up on the chat board, and this way you get your stuff, and then Amazon, out of their own pocket, throws me back a little bit of coin so that I can get a cigar for myself every once in a while. And we are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed for us to earn fees when you go to Amazon or its affiliated sites, and it doesn't cost you 1 extra cent. So thank you for those of you who have used that link to shop on Amazon. Joe and I will be back tomorrow night. We'll see what Perry Mason episodes are up tonight at 11:30 and tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'm going to DVD these things so I can watch them when I'm a bit more away. Well, the 11:30 one, I plan to be asleep, so we'll see what happens for the one after that. All right.
Well, you have a good evening, Mr. Chiaffi, and we will see you tomorrow night when we'll be again totally confused by the models, which will probably throw a different scenario for the end of the week and the weekend into our ring of fortune.
Right. Exactly. So have a great night, everyone. Thanks for being here. David Schwartz, thanks for hitting Super Chat. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you tomorrow night right here. Good night, everybody.